are watching it who can't, who are visually impaired, we would like to introduce ourselves.
Okay.
Say who we are when we speak.
Okay, got it.
The first time.
The first time, got you.
But I'm going to ask you to do that anyway, so don't worry.
Well, yeah, and I have my notes.
Okay, welcome everybody to the second of John Jay Office for the Advancement of Research's book talks for the spring season, spring semester. Today's book talk is by our own Dr. Philip T. Yanos of the Psychology Department here at John Jay College, and his book, sorry Phil, it should be here, Exiles in New York City.
Here, the copy.
Which also has a subtitle that unfortunately I don't have here. I am Dan Stageman. I am the Director of Research Operations here at the college, and it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Yanos, who will then introduce our other panelists, but I will quickly just let you know their names, and hopefully I'm getting them right from closest to Phil. Taina B. Martinez, Chief Executive Officer of Baltic Street Wellness Solutions. Dr. Sasha-Marie Robinson, Senior Vice President of Recovery and Treatment Services at Services for the Underserved. And Yumiko Ikuta, Director of Access to Mental Health Services at the New York City Mayor's Office of Community Mental Health. So our author today, Dr. Philip T. Yanos, is Professor of Psychology here at John Jay College. He's an associate editor for the journal Stigma and Health and currently serves as the director of clinical training for the Ph.D. program in clinical psychology here at John Jay College and the CUNY Graduate Center. He is an advocate for people with lived experience of mental health conditions and serves on the board of City Voices. He was also awarded the Gaetano Benedetti Award for lifetime service to psychosocial approaches to psychosis from ISPS-US in 2024. And that is a very long title, so Phil, I'll let you tell us what that organization was. Dr. Yanos actually grew up on Ward's Island here in New York City, so he has a unique perspective on that place and its importance to the city's history. For today's book, Exiles in New York City, Dr. Yanos shares untold stories from Ward's Island, offering a new lens on the city's past and present from the perspective of the marginalized. This incisive and timely book reveals a part of New York City that has long been hidden in plain sight, and it also considers how to transform Ward's Island for a new era. Please welcome Dr. Yanos and our panelists.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you so much to the Office of the Advancement of Research for the opportunity to do this. I am Philip Yanos. I'm a professor here. I know I have to remember to introduce myself for those who are watching. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank my panelists for taking time out of their very busy schedules. These are very busy folks running organizations, working in very important positions to come and do this with me, so I really want to thank them. I also want to acknowledge that it's the end of Ramadan tonight. I want to thank those who are fasting, who are here. You've got a couple more hours, so thank you. This is my brief overview of what I'd like us to do. So I'm going to talk about the book a little bit. I'm going to give an abbreviated presentation. For those who've seen me talk about this before, it'll be a little shorter. And mostly what I want to do is I want to focus on the general themes that relate to the New York City mental health service system and what we can do in the future. So that'll lead to the discussion that we'll have with the panelists, and I'll sit down, we'll just talk. I have some questions that I'm going to pose. We'll be excited to hear what people say, and then they can ask questions, and then there'll be opportunity for the audience to ask questions. So that'll be another 15 minutes, and then I do have books that people can buy if there's interest, and I think it might be a good time to mill around at the end there. I don't know if we're going to be kicked out at 6 o'clock. Okay, so we're not going to be kicked out, but it'll still be nice to have time for that, and that's my idea of what we could do. Sound okay? Okay, so let me just start. So I'm shifting slides. This was the event schedule slide. So this is just what the book looks like, the cover. A little bit about me. This was discussed in the introduction. Yeah, so in addition to being here, I work for Services for the Underserved as a consultant, and I work on something called an assertive community treatment team. I've been doing that for approximately 20 years now. The stigma researcher part was mentioned. I'm on the board of City Voices, and I've also joined the board of Institute for the Development of the Human Arts, which is a organization focused on training primarily. And I am a native New Yorker, and I did live on Wards Island for approximately 10 years. So I just want to acknowledge different people who contributed to this. This is my acknowledgement slide. So my family, we shared this experience of living in this place together, so that's very important to acknowledge them. None of them are here, but you know, they've been part of this journey, and of course they allowed me to do this. And you know, the publisher, I appreciate that they thought it was worthy of publication. There's a lot of students who really helped a lot. Some of them are here, some of them have moved on, but Melissa Martinez is here. Shariar's not able to come because of Eid, but he and Melissa both did a tremendous amount to help me with this. And librarians are really important. I know I've thanked librarians in the past, but if any of you are here, thank you, because librarians play a huge role in this type of thing. And then my son Theo, who is not here, he's having a good time somewhere. He helped create designs for the, and we co-designed the website, which we'll talk about. Hi, Omar. There are some seats. Yes. Okay. Okay, so just some of the themes that I'm going to bring up. I'm just foreshadowing, and then I'll bring these back. So this is major themes from Wards Island's story that are relevant. Is that New York City has this desire to identify locations to keep people away, keep away marginalized communities. Right, so this stems from this NIMBYism impulse, not in my backyard. It's not a new thing, right? So you'll see that it goes back to, you know, the 1800s. In all of these places, people of color and recent immigrants are always overrepresented. That's always been part of the story. Use of barriers to reinforce this exclusion. You know, sometimes they're invisible psychological barriers, but a lot of times it's a literal barrier, like a body of water or a fence, or what we call hostile architecture, which is like when there's a place you could sit and there's spikes on it and things like that, right? We have a history of counterproductive disputes between city and state. We don't have any state representatives here, so they can't speak up for themselves, but that dysfunction, you know, is part of the story, a recurring theme. Hopefully it will be something that will be a thing of the past, you know, soon. And we have ambivalence, you know, about doing things that are evidence-based, things that we know work. We say, oh, it's not going to work here, and for whatever reason, and then we don't do it, or we do it in a very partial kind of way. So just a little bit about the place. So Wards Island is, you know, a landmass that's now attached to this other landmass called Randall's Island. It's in the East River between East Harlem and Queens. So I circled it there. That's what it looks like from overhead over there. This is just a photo of my family. So we lived on the island in a house called Cottage 4. So you can see the number 4 small there. I'm the smaller kid in these photos. So we had a nice, you know, setup there. I'm not going to talk much about my experience. You can ask about it if you want. So I'll talk a little bit about the past first, right? So this is the historical part, the part that I dug into the archives for. So the origin story of Wards Island as a place of exclusion starts in 1847 when New York City was preparing to build a refuge for sick and destitute immigrants in Astoria, which was not part of the city yet, but it was very close. And what's stated by the records is that the inhabitants of the area, incensed at the project, assembled in disguise and destroyed the premises on the following evening, right? So this is an act of xenophobic vandalism, let's say, right? Not unlike the kinds of things that we hear about now, but people kind of went ahead and did it. So instead of like pushing back, the city said, uh-oh, we got to find a place to put people, right? So these were people from Germany and Ireland, recent immigrants. So they started buying land on this island, and it was only reachable by ferry at the time. Eventually, the city bought the entire island, and it started to house institutions there. So the immigrant refuge was the first one. That was, eventually, those services moved to Ellis Island, which you all know about, and so those buildings became available. There was the next building was called the Inebriate Asylum, and then there was the New York City Asylum for the Insane Men's Division. So that opened in 1871, and that became kind of the defining institution of the island. Sometimes we encounter like some romanticization of the asylum period. Something that's clear from reviewing the records is that it was underfunded, overcrowded, understaffed. There were poor conditions from pretty much from day one, and that the staff were brutalizing the patients essentially. There were accounts of people being killed and things like that in media accounts, et cetera. So this just covers some of those things. So this is a quote I love. You can only find this in the records, right? So Alexander MacDonald, who was the first long-term superintendent, said, "There's not a town or village upon this continent that spends as little upon its insane as this great city of New York." So he ran it, right? This was his assessment as the person who ran it. Descriptions are that the building was faulty, inconvenient, lighting and heating were inadequate, attendants were too few, food and clothing not much more than sufficient, right? So all of these things are described from day one. You kind of get to the city-state dysfunction story pretty soon because things were alleged, right, about poor conditions, and New York State kind of asserted its authority and took over from the city in 1899. But there's no evidence that anything really changed, after the state took over. In the 1930s, we had a big change with Robert Moses, the master builder, who some of you hopefully have heard about, had a big impact on New York City's landscape, right? He had a vision that he could run highways over the island. They could be sort of a platform for highways he wanted to build, and that he could turn it into parkland, right? So he was Parks Commissioner at the same time as he was head of the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority. So he saw all of this as an opportunity to kind of achieve multiple aims. The idea was that the institutions were going to be closed and people were going to be sent to far-off places in Suffolk County. He did not succeed, but the park was created. It was just kind of created around the institutions, which is basically the situation now. So there wasn't a successful effort to evict them. Eventually, new buildings were built in the late 1950s. And we had some new things that came up. New institutions came at the end of the 70s. So that's a picture of Mayor Ed Koch at the time, standing in front of the Keener building, which is now the Keener Men's Shelter. So that was opened in 1980, just as the city was becoming aware of an increase in street homelessness that was overwhelming the capacity of the Bowery facilities. And so I just mentioned this because New York City's sort of system for responding to homelessness is built around this Callahan Consent Decree, which was established right around the same time, and that specifically mentioned the Keener shelter. And what I want to just note about this is that it established the right to shelter, right? So New York City is one of the only places in the country that has a right to shelter that's enshrined. However, it has minimal standards, right? So the standards are that it's a bed that's more kind of the width of a cot, right? So that's a photo from the inside of the Clark Thomas Men's Shelter that's on Ward's Island right now. And so you can see that these are fairly minimal standards that the city sort of enforces. And shelters could do more, but often when you set minimal standards, that's what you get. So coming to the present now, I described this history. Is it any different now? So essentially, quick answer is no. hasn't changed much. So we have a place with natural beauty with these enchanting views. These are photos that I took. But we also have about 1,200 people living there in multiple institutions, so in Manhattan Psychiatric Center, in Kirby Forensic Psychiatric Center, in 2 community residences, the Jewish Board community residence and the Transitional Living residence. There's the Clark Thomas shelter, the Keenerman shelter, and there's Odyssey House residential substance use treatment. So there's a myriad of places that people live in. At the same time, there are no services for them. So there's no places to buy a bag of chips or a bottle of Coca-Cola or whatever. There are no places to eat. There's no houses of worship. There was a Protestant chapel when I was growing up that closed down. There's no libraries. There's a food establishment that shows up on Google Maps, but I wasn't able to go to it because it was closed every time I tried to go to it. So I don't really know what's going on in there. And there's a bus, right? So there's the M35. And so, you know, if you've been to Wards Island, you have ridden the N35. And it runs infrequently, and it doesn't, you know, really, there's not a sense that this is a high priority transit route for the city. Okay, so it's a bus that goes back and forth between 125th and Lexington and Wards and Randall's Island. So that's all you got. And so we also have this system where there are these renovated sports fields that are now surrounded by fences. So there's this kind of message that's given to people like, here's this nice thing that's right in front of you, but it's not for you, right? And so the Randall's Island Park Alliance, that's a nonprofit organization that has overseen the kind of improvement of the quality of the facilities, which is great, right? They've explicitly sort of promoted this idea that it's not for the residents of the island. So they've said that it was like Night of the Living Dead before they put up the fences, and they promoted the use of the name Randall's Island, kind of almost like suggesting that if it's not an institution, that the name Wards Island shouldn't be used. It's gradually sort of disappearing from maps. So this is from the Department of Transportation, somewhere between 2017 and 2018. It's kind of disappeared from the map. This bothers me personally, right? So it's like, you know, this is my hometown, right? So I'm seeing it kind of be erased. So what do New Yorkers know? We did a survey, a quick and dirty survey on Prolific, which is a kind of a research platform some of you may have used or participated in as participants, right? And so the types of things that New Yorkers say is largely they say, I've never heard of it, but what do you think is on there? And they'll say, like, there used to be a psychiatric facility. You know, this is the island that once held a hospital for smallpox, but it's mostly been abandoned. So they kind of have this idea there was something there, right? They don't know there's still like over 1,000 people there. And then residents, we surveyed residents. So this is something that the people in my research lab helped with, approached people by the bus, you know, asked them questions about what would you like New Yorkers who are unfamiliar with it to know about Wards Island and what it's like to live on it. And so, you know, this quote sort of captures it, you know, the goddamn truth. We are New York's forgotten people, discarded, not treated like people. And when we asked people about, like, are you able to use the bike path? Are you able to use these amenities? They would say, you know, we don't go there. You know, it's not for us. And of course, universally, people would speak about the fact that they couldn't have access to any goods or services without taking the bus to East Harlem. At the same time, there were also statements that indicated that people did value, you know, being in a place of natural beauty. And so this kind of, you know, made me think that maybe there's a way we could make this salvageable for folks, right? So they would say it's a special place, it's a good space for your mind. We did talk to staff as well, former staff, and they also talked about the isolation and exclusion, so very similar to what residents were saying. The last quote is about the EDM festival that used to happen on Randall's Island and kind of the very jarring juxtaposition between that and the institutions being there. So it was called Electric Zoo. Now there's something else. Not sure what it's called now. Okay, so the future. So I'm going to give some proposals, and then again, we're going to zoom out and we're going to think more broadly about New York. There's a website that I'll show you the link to that you can check out to learn more about our proposals. So one proposal is that Robert Moses' vision should be completed and the institution should be removed and it should become completely parkland, right? And this is the vision of the Randall's Island Park Alliance. Another vision came from the former Manhattan Borough President, now New York City Comptroller Mark Levine, who proposed that the population, the census of the Manhattan Psychiatric Center should be increased to accommodate more people who are unhoused, right? So that was his proposal. This is from his Instagram account. You can see it's a picture of Ward's Island. And this was a New York Times article about it. It didn't seem to really go anywhere, but it did receive some attention from the media, this idea of moving 400 homeless people to the hospital. This is something that I take personal offense at, because hospitalization in a state hospital is basically incarceration. So incarceration is not a solution to homelessness. Housing is. So in short, my proposal is that we have space to build permanent housing. We have underused space that is allocated to the hospital currently. It is actually zoned for residential. If you look at the zoning map, you can see that it is part of the island, and that we could create permanent housing. We could consolidate the populations of the hospitals into one building. We could allow people, the shelter residents, to move to this permanent housing. We could create amenities on the ground floors so people can live there. They could have a grocery store, a pharmacy, and a diner. Those are sort of the three amenities that we think are essential. And we also have this vision of bringing a museum of mental health to the island, and we think that the Keener building would be a great place for that because it's a historic building, and there is no acknowledgement of this history in New York, and we don't have a museum of mental health. So again, take a look at the website. It's wardsislanddesign.org if you're interested in this, and you can read all about the designs, and you'll see the stuff that Theo created. He's an urban planning student. So that's my proposal, but what I'm going to do now is I want to zoom out. So that's what the design is for permanent housing. You can kind of see how things fit there. So I want to zoom out now to think about New York City's mental health system in general. So this is just the same slide I showed before, and I just want us to think about these things and how these operate in general in New York City. And so again, we have this desire to find places to keep people away, to minimize community opposition, right? That's that NIMBYism thing. There's certain parts of the city that are more prone to it than others, right? So we know that there is a very small proportion of shelters on Staten Island, for example, right? These are some of the things that we know. Again, the overrepresentation of people of color and immigrants continues to be the case. We continue to put up barriers, real or psychological. We continue to have disputes between city and state, although maybe that's changing, maybe it's getting better. And we're still, trying to figure out how to do things that we know work here, right? So those are my broad statements about this. And so what I want to do now is just have a seat and pose some things specifically to the panelists. But first I want to let them introduce themselves a little bit about what you do, what your organization does. So I put them in reverse order of where you're sitting, not even knowing where you were going to sit. Oh. So Yumi, would you be able to put your microphone closer to you and say?
Is it turned on?
It's on, yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. So my name is Yumi Ikuta, and I am the director of access to mental health and substance use services at the Mayor's Office of Community Mental Health. And a lot of people don't know about our office because it's kind of new. So at the end of the end of 2021, the City Council actually mandated into law that there be a permanent office focused on mental health and substance use for the city of New York. And of course, after COVID, it really came to the fore in terms of the importance of really focusing on that and trying to fix the systems issues, if you will, examine the gaps and see how we can improve services and how we can help people access the services. And in full disclosure, I also am someone who lives with bipolar disorder and have survived suicide attempts twice in my life.
Thank you. So Sasha-Marie Robinson, who's the SVP for Recovery and Treatment Services at SUS, where I mentioned, full disclosure, I do work at SUS as well. Right? Yeah.
Hi, Doctor.
Is yours on? Press the button, see.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Dr. Sasha-Marie Robinson. I actually am a graduate of John Jay College. I did my BA and my first master's in forensic psychology here. I work for Services for the Underserved. We provide behavioral health, developmental disability services, veteran services, and homeless services to New York City. My division, specific division, is recovery and treatment. That includes our clinics, our clubhouses, our employment programs, our respite programs, our newly about to open supported crisis stabilization center, and I'm missing something.
You mentioned.
And our ACT teams, pathway teams, and our SOS team, which is a part of the mayor's office. I'm sorry, the governor's office, yes.
You mentioned permanent housing?
I don't do
You don't do
permanent
it. You don't.
housing. I used to, not anymore. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taina Martinez. I am the Chief Executive Officer to Baltic Street Wellness Solutions, formerly known as Baltic Street AEH. No one knew what AEH stood for, so I changed the name. It was Advocacy, Employment, and Housing, but we do more than that. We are the largest peer-led organization in all of New York State. I have a little over about 100 peers that work for me. From the board down are all identified as individuals with lived experience. So it makes our organization extremely unique. I've been working for Baltic Street for a little, it's about to be 25 years. So they got me when I was really young. Stony Brook grad, sorry, not John Jay, MSW as well. And I'm also a wonderful person with lived experience as well. So we are the faces that tell you that you never know who's in the street that have a lived experience, right? So I'm proud to be here today. Our organization does advocacy, employment, housing. We work with the Bridger programs that are out of Staten Island, South Beach Psychiatric Center, Rumsey, out in Richmond University Center in Staten Island as well. We were in Kingsborough for a little while. We're no longer there. But again, we bridge people from community, from either prison settings, hospital settings, transitional living units into communities in New York, as well as the Adult Home Initiative, which please look it up, huge lawsuit where a person felt that their rights were being violated and they were in an adult home setting longer than they were supposed to be, and they won. So this is the power of the peer of the voice. When a group of individuals need to go do something and it happens, and they won. And so we got now peers inside adult home residents to now transition people from adult home residents into communities. What else do we do? Employment, education. We actually work out of the CUNY systems. So if a young, student or any student decides that they need support, we're there as well. And we're all over New York City and expanding to other states very soon. So we'll be the largest in the nation's grassroots very soon.
And the Resource and Wellness Center, where
Yes.
we did our project over 10 years ago, is called something else now. What's it called?
It's now the Isaac Brown's Community Healing Arts Center.
Right. And it's in the same building in Sunset Park, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Which is, wherever, we have so many programs,
Yeah.
so
But
forgive
that's
me.
that's a special
Yeah.
one for me because I know that anyone can go and there's so many different things available.
So the beautiful thing about
Yeah.
the center, technically, there's no criteria, right? If you need a safe space, you can go to the center. We have an array of different programs, from music, art, poetry, from poetry to music. Now we've opened the center, the space, in such a way that we have now events that are happening out of the center. So community people that decided, hey, I would like to do like a group here, young people, all different type of activities. They're literally, it's super duper organic, are happening at the center. And it's like almost feng shui. So originally when we got it, it was, you know, you think of a community center, and again, I'm from East Harlem, from 123rd Street. Community centers gave you broken chairs, everything was run down, and when I became the CEO, I said, nope. So I did a huge renovation, a little over $250,000. Yumi, don't you look at me.
Okay, I gotta
right?
go,
And just kind of and redid it in a way that everyone felt welcome, because Sunset has a really large Hispanic community, and they felt they could not be allowed through the doors of Industry City. So seeing my face as the CEO, I was out there. I was giving out flyers. I was talking to the grandmothers and the grandfathers and the aunts and the uncles, saying, come, I need your voice. I need you here. And so now we have this beautiful group of community that happens out of the center. So I'm really proud of that. And again, don't look at me.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for describing what you do. And so part of this, what it speaks to, is the complexity of the mental health service system here in New York City, right? And I, intentionally reached out to the three of you because I feel like you represent some different arms of it, right? And on the edge of progress, from my view, right? So, and we have government, right, kind of overseeing things. We have the lived experience movement, and an organization created by people with lived experience who had been in hospitals, who had been through all that. And we have the professional system, which gets contracts from the state and the city, and provides services that are what the state and state are asking for, and doing them in the best way possible, right? So these are all different components of what is out there. There are other things too. So I had some questions I wanted to pose, and so the first one really has to do with what's always top of mind for me, which is housing, because I provide mental health services for SUS, and I supervise people who are providing services, and we're constantly running into this issue. Like, we can offer them high quality therapy, but if the person doesn't have a stable and decent place to live, how much can we really do? So, Warzon's story is really intertwined with homelessness, the story, homelessness story in New York City. And so just the numbers, right? So most people know there's about 80, 90,000 people in the shelter system, right? Most of those folks are families. So there's about 25,000 homeless single adults, right, in the shelter system. And then there's also maybe 4,000 on the street. I participated in the count last week. I don't know how many we'll find this year, right? But that was the number last year. And so the estimate is that about a third of these folks have a serious mental illness. So it's about 10,000 people total, right? So for these 10,000 people, and again, we care about everybody, but this is a group that's particularly vulnerable. What do each of you think would be the best way to dramatically decrease the number of single homeless adults with serious mental illnesses in New York City? So when we look at the history, the only times the number really went down was when the city and the state got together and collaborated to create more units of housing. So with that first New York agreement, we saw numbers go down. And then they come back up because there's more need comes along. So I don't know who'd like to go first, but what do people think? Yeah, go for it.
So,
So Taina.
hi, Taina. I also do housing, scatter site housing. We have 87 beds across New York City. So I believe that one of the ways that we can reduce the number of homelessness is that if the government actually puts their money where their mouth is and redirect the funding into more supported housing, permanent supported housing. It's imperative that, like what you just said regarding New York, people that have stable housing have more of an opportunity for healing and recovery, whatever that looks like for them, right? And so if you don't have a safe place to go, clearly you're more, vulnerable to the outside, environmental factors, right? That can lead a person either to more danger, contact with police, or obviously, spiraling in the wrong areas. So truly believe that, housing is where it's at, and that's where, we should really take a look at.
So I definitely agree with Taina, but I also think that we also need to have an increase in supported services along with housing. So we need more units, but we also need that support that's coming from that outpatient services. So we have our clinics, people go to clinics, they go to all of these different services. They don't always translate back to home, right? You go out to them, they talk to you, you're describing what's happening to you, but they're not seeing it. Many times people are on teams such as ACT teams or other teams that get to come into the home, but that's a small amount based on the numbers that we're looking at. So again, if we had the establishment of more teams or having clinics such as our CCBHC, Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinics, that can operate outside the walls, right? So I can go to your home. I can really experience what you're telling me in a session. I can really say, okay, you're experiencing food insecurity. Let me help you right now instead of you having to come out and let me know that. And if we had teams following people, I don't know, for a year after moving into their new unit, getting you acclimated, it's a new way of life, and we have to treat it as such and not just say if we give someone a key that they'll be okay.
So the housing first model is supported housing plus assertive community treatment, right? So if we were going to dramatically increase the supply of supported housing for people who are vulnerable, recently living in shelters or on the street, we would want to provide an increase in ACT team, certain ACT, because right now there's a wait list, right? ACT teams are full, right? So we would need a lot more. Right.
Yes, so it's acting, but it's also other supportive outpatient services.
Right.
I would weave in also peer services in that as well.
Yeah, I'm
Because
gonna talk about
I
that.
truly believe that, you can't have one without the other, because sometimes clinical is not always the best, right?
right.
And some people become, they look at clinicians as, unfortunately, the enemy. So when you find a voice that is similar and represents a person's lived experience and mutuality, you will see more successes for long-term longevity within the communities.
Completely agree. Every outpatient team, every clinic that I operate, every team that goes out has a peer. I don't think I have any program that doesn't have peers. Yeah.
So I'm glad you folks didn't mention that the system, the process of actually people getting supportive housing, mental health supportive housing, it's a little bit clunky, a little bit onerous.
A little
in
bit like
terms of
traumatizing in itself.
submitting the application with all the required documentation, and then you have to go through interviews with, different housing programs. So if we could get, we're continually trying to improve that sort of, operational process. But I think if we could make some real big streamlining changes, that would help a
To
lot to get
speed it
people
up.
faster into, because we do have a lot of, I have to say, we're very lucky in New York City that we do have comparatively a lot more supportive housing units than most other metropolises in the country.
Right. We
So-
have fewer people living outdoors than, say, Los Angeles, right, which has 75% of the homeless population lives outdoors, right? But we also have a climate that would make it dangerous to live outdoors at certain times of the year, right?
Exactly. It's interesting because you mentioned I also did the Department of Homeless Services does this great event every year where we go out with a huge cadre of volunteers all over the city, and we survey what, block by block, how many unhoused folks there are. And we also talk to them about, whether they would want to go into a shelter or access a drop-in center. And it was interesting because I still see there's still a fair bit of mistrust of government and government services. And, we have to do something about that because, yes, we have the supply, but further upstream, the problem is how do we engage the unhoused folks, build that trust in order to even have a conversation about the housing options, okay? And as Taina mentioned, people like myself and Taina who have experienced living with a mental health condition, many peer specialists have homeless histories, histories of justice involvement, and those experiences are essential to building that almost automatic trust with an individual. And so it's interesting because my mayor's office, we conducted a focus group with unhoused folks and asked them straight out, how can we do a better job of engaging with you folks, and what kind of services and supports do you feel you need, you want, in order to succeed in your life? And so it was interesting because the first thing I said is, we know that outreach workers mean well, but when they come up to us and automatically say, do you need help? Do you need services? It's kind of disrespectful and almost demeaning to us. And it's important to get to know us as individual human beings. You know, what are our likes, dislikes, you know, who are we as personalities before you kind of jump into the services aspect. And then maybe I'll trust you to open up more about what it is what are my hopes and dreams and goals and objectives, right? So that was a real eye-opener. And then secondly, I was very surprised, and even when I was doing the survey, many unhoused folks don't know about drop-in centers. The ones that did were frustrated because they said, I don't know what hours they have the showers, I don't know if I could get clean clothes or not, when I could do laundry. I can't find that information anywhere. And a lot of people don't know that there aren't just, I like to call them welcome centers, that's the way I describe them, and I got more attention, interest that way. But there are many drop-in centers that are not funded by the City Department of Homeless Services, but privately funded by nonprofit organizations. So there is a lot out there. So what we did was we put together, and they also wanted supported employment services. I said, you know, what do you mean there's employment agencies just for people with mental health conditions, you know? And they wanted to know about free legal services. So we developed a directory with specifically those pieces of information with the hours of what's available at what time. You know, it really took a lot of time to survey, and you had to call every single drop-in center to get that information. The other thing that's interesting is that because we work a lot with DHS, Department of Homeless Services, NYPD, and other city and state agencies, a lot of the business improvement districts, like Times Square, Garment District, around the city, came to us for, you know, help about what can we do to improve connecting the unhoused individuals in our areas to services. And it was quite good because they weren't looking for that punitive approach, but how can we just do a better job of connecting them to improve their lives, connecting them to services. And what's interesting, I didn't really know that there were police officers who specifically are working in these business improvement districts that focus on loss prevention, you know, for retail businesses. And they get to know, they're always walking in the neighborhood, they get to know the people who are unhoused and have a relationship and You know, at certain points, people who are unhoused may say to them, you know what, I'm ready to go into a detox rehab program, but I don't know where they are, how to, you know, access them. And so, and the same with the business improvement districts, they have staff that also walk the streets in their areas and get to know folks. And so they asked for us to put together a directory of detox and rehab programs, but not just like where are they, but how do you get admitted to them? What's the eligibility? What's the insurance requirements? All that detailed information, and we put that together as well, and also, of course, shared it with the outreach teams who are not familiar with the services, because the Department of Homeless Services oversees the street outreach teams, and they don't necessarily specialize in mental health and substance
Right, but that in itself sounds like an issue, like of lack of coordination between these things that should be coordinated, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
why we're
right.
here to coordinate with all the different
Yeah, but let me ask another question that I think you might have some good news to share with, which is that, you know, pretty much everybody agrees that police officers should not be the first responders when people are experiencing escalations in symptoms, right? Some people call it mental health crisis. I think that that's sometimes overly, you know, applied too liberally, right? Sort of like something that someone's going through that might concern somebody who's looking at them in some way, right? It might be something they would identify as such, it might not be. But so we still have a system, right, where they are the first responders. I experienced something just the other day with somebody I work with where police showed up in minutes, and then EMS showed up at like 4 hours, right? So it's an absurd system. I know there was an announcement today that you can say something about. So what are your thoughts about what we can do to fundamentally change the way that these experiences are responded to in New York City? What we're doing now does not work for just about anybody.
Right. So here's the thing. There are several options to, how shall I say, respond to mental health crisis situations right now. The problem is we're not doing a good enough job of educating the public about them, and so we have to do a bit. I want to ask you, the audience, a question. How many people know about 988 and know what services you can get from 988? Can you show of hands? Who knows? Okay, yeah. That's what I'm finding in the general public. Not too many people know. And this was a federally mandated 3-digit number, like 911. Instead of 911, you call 988 for mental health and substance use. And it doesn't have to be a crisis. It can be, but 24/7, it's a hotline where you can talk to a counselor, you can talk to a peer specialist about, you know, stressors in your life, up to, you know, you're contemplating suicide. So that is really the first place that people should go to in order to talk about what's the crisis or what is the mental health situation that the person you're helping or yourself is experiencing. And then a lot of times you can resolve a lot of issues with the counselor because they know what services you can access or, you know, what are the best next steps for your particular situation. Number 2, they can dispatch what are called mobile crisis teams, okay? And these are teams of only mental health professionals and peer support specialists who will go out within 2 or 3 hours. They can, you know, come in person to help with a more urgent type situation, okay? And then the final option is, if it's a bit of a higher level crisis, we still get a lot of calls, unfortunately, going into 911 that don't really need to go to 911. That's really for very high level emergency situations where, you know, time is of the essence. Say somebody is talking about suicide, they have a specific plan, they have a history of attempting suicide. Okay, those are higher risk situations, and they have the means. Okay, so the 911 system can triage calls, listen to calls, and for the first time in New York City, we have what we consider not a public safety response to mental health, but a public health response. So we don't send out the police, we send out what's called the Be Heard team, the Behavioral Health Emergency Assistance Response Division. And they go out with a team consisting of licensed social workers and EMTs. So then this is coordinated through NYPD, of course, that takes in the calls. The EMTs are hired and employed by FDNY. And then you have the social workers who are hired and overseen by health and hospitals. So it's a complicated, but collaborative, and it works very well. We get very good feedback from the public about the service itself.
But people I've talked to, you don't get Be Heard.
Yes, so it's not in all of the.
So what is this new initiative that was discussed today? And then I want to make sure that other people have a chance.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. The new mayor is very intent on expanding the Be Heard program. Right now, we're in half of the precincts. He'd like all of the precincts to be able to dispatch a Be Heard team. And he has now set up a new office of community safety that will bring the coordination of all these different programs from different agencies together so that they're under one roof and they're not siloed in different entities. So hopefully things will run smoother in implementation.
And what about ways that we could change it? So what do you think, Taina? What should we do?
Ways that we can change it.
Right.
Well, one of the things that I would say is, although I think Be Heard is great, I didn't hear a thing yet about peers being a part of that team, right? So that's one. Two, as we all see around the room, you all did not know about 988, right? So your job today, as we are in an educational institution, is to educate yourselves and educate your families and friends of 988, okay?
I have brochures back here.
All right, thank you, Yumi, right? And we are in the age of advanced technology. Make sure you pull out your phones and educate yourselves on what a crisis is, right? And that crisis needs to be met with care, not criminalization. That's number 3, right? And if you do encounter where someone does, dial 911, I believe that the city needs to have the 911 operators educated on what is a mental health crisis, so that way they can redirect that call to Be Heard or to another modality of support, right? Yeah, so again, it just seems like there's just a lack of education just across the systems. But I will say this, and it's built that way for a reason, right? So, because there is a line of separation, there is still a line of people that are in hurting modalities, often Black and brown individuals, are met with what? Criminalization. When we saw Ed Koch, wonderful photo with him at that wonderful men's shelter. But in the 1980s in Wards Island, if you guys are not from New York City, it was the height of the crack cocaine epidemic. Who do you think was in that shelter? Why do you think it looked so barren, right? It's bare minimum for a reason, right? It was to institutionalize minds and tell you did not belong here, but you belonged here, and this is what you deserve, right? So I believe just education, education, education. We start with ourselves, and then we start with our communities, and ensuring that our voice lets the mayor know are you institutionalized, forgive me, I'm like word vomit right now, but are you training your folks to know that there are other options and that the police do not need to be deployed out because there are bigger things that they can be doing? And it's not addressing someone that is in the middle of a crisis, of an epidemic of either mental health or homelessness, that they're hungry or they're hurting, right? So meeting people with care.
It sounds like there's a staffing issue too, right? We need a lot more people in the mobile teams to be able to go, right? So why is it that the cops show up within minutes, but the mobile team shows up within hours, right?
Agreed.
So there's not enough staffing. For folks who are coming in, there are extra chairs outside. You can grab a chair, I believe. Yes. I know I have other things that I threw out here. Sasha, do you want to make a comment before we move on to the next question?
I think it's all been said, but I do want to add that, yes, while we're waiting for the city to kind of get the word out, and not a lot of people know about 988, and not a lot of people know about the services, that's why on the agency level, we try to do a lot of education. We ourselves are going to the police departments and the fire departments and telling them about our programs, telling them about our 28-day respite program. That is peer run, that you can go and stay for 28 days and relax, release, get back to yourself, and then leave with a referral to outpatient care, which then starts the cycle of you being in the know about where you can go when you are in crisis. We also have, again, I mentioned our supported crisis stabilization center. That's going to be 24-hour stay. So you literally can come in, sit, get services from a counselor, a peer, case management, and again, leave with referrals and with the knowledge of, okay, when I'm in trouble, I know where I'm going. So again, even at the agency level, we really have to push that information, hoping that if someone goes to the fire department, they know to bring them to us. If a police officer picks up someone, it's like, you know what, let me try this program first. So the education is on both sides, the city and us as agencies as well.
So I want to give people in the audience a chance to ask questions, but before that, I just want to ask everyone, since I invited you to come here and you took time out of your schedules, if you could throw out one idea that you have that you think can help us better serve the needs of people diagnosed with serious mental illnesses. If you could say that in a couple sentences, if you have something.
So there's something that us as providers, we think of it last when it should be the first thing we think about, which is we design programs based on what we think someone needs versus designing it based on what they need when they need it, and knowing that those needs change over time. The thing that someone needed 5 years ago is not what they need now, right? We talk about post-COVID, where it's like, hey, come back into our services, but post-COVID, we're now in a telehealth world. What do you mean? Call me. You can get me on the phone, but we fight them. No, I need to see you in person. But why do I need to see you in person all the time? So I think it's really being flexible with our services, flexible with everything that we do. Flexible, I would say, with what we are funded to take care of. You know, being able to, yes, our funding says go find this specific category of individual, but if I see someone else, can I help them too without trying to figure it out with some other funding source, right? So being more flexible, being more open, and being just really ready to kind of reiterate our services, change them up as the times come, and not feel like we have to stay in one place.
Thank you for that, because I agree 1,000%. I'm hiring a lot of young people all of a sudden. I've fallen under a different age bracket all of a sudden. I woke up one day and was like, the audacity, right? No. But young people are the voice, and they have been voicing. My participant communicates with me via text more, and I don't want to, say no to that. Right? I don't want to say, well, that's the wrong way, right? you know, we still work in an age where face-to-face is what's valued. And don't get me wrong, I truly believe in human connection, because that's what my organization is all about. It's about human connection, because we are in a loneliness epidemic right now, and the health is spiraling. So this is going to be my little cheap plug. We have a symposium annually to talk about social connection and wellness. It's important, right? And after COVID, we are seeing different modalities in order to connect with people, right? But don't miss out on the human connection is all I'm saying, right? So I do believe that also regarding education, you know, there are so many different systems that are in place. You have the New York City public housing system, you have the mental health system, police system, all these different systems, they are siloed, right? One system doesn't want to talk to the other, and the other system feels that this is better than this. It's designed like that for a reason, and it is going to take a lot of self-accountability of education, with educating your, going back to your organizations and saying, hey, this is what I've learned. We should adapt this. Look into this. Let's do some research around this. We have amazing people like Dr. Yanos, and I've known him for a very long time. I won't say for how long, but long time. But he's done a lot of work on this. So more, you know, educational institutions that have professors like Dr. Yanos to bring this to bringing real world live experiences in the now, because it's happening, right? This separation, and please buy the book and read the book, because it's happening now. And it has been happening. Historically, you will see the separation, but it's got to take all of us to not allow those gates and not allow those walls, because we all deserve a green, safe place. We all need to know what meditative spaces are. But if you live in a community that all you hear are gunshots and violence and over-policing, you can't tell me to meditate, because that doesn't exist, because my environment is unhealthy, right? So bring it back. Learn about it, express that everyone deserves healing in a good space together.
You want to add one thing, Yumi, before we take questions from the audience? Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for your answers to my questions. I know I didn't get to ask all the ones I prepped you on, but I think we touched on things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so we can take some questions from the audience. So in the back. So try to pitch your voice loud. So. Oh, okay. We have microphones too. There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jadixa. Thank you for you guys' service. It was a very good panel. One of my questions is, how can we help the international students in their needs, since like they're not like New York City residents and they like require some different steps. So like my question is, how they can be helped when they need help.
Right, so international folks generally, including students, right? But there's so much precarity now with the, you know, federal government, you know, terrorizing people essentially, right? Sorry, I know this is on video, hi. So, yeah, so what thoughts do you have about ways we can better serve our international community members, including students?
Say no to ICE.
Right.
We could start off with that.
Yeah.
ICE out, ensuring that people are safe. We are terrorizing humanity. It's disgusting. I can say it, don't worry, right? Like we are. Like it is not safe right now for people that are trying to become citizens here and want to become students, right? It is just not a safe space, right? Protection is mental health right now is really at a brink, right? And it's heartbreaking to see. And there are days that I wish I could do more, right? There really are. But again, I got to go back to making sure that community is connected. And, you know, we have to band together because our voices are stronger together in order to end major disparities in people that are trying to come into this country and that are trying to, you know, go to school.
But so the peer services that Baltic Street offers are not, you're not billing insurance for your services. Anyone can come in and get
You could come to
assistance,
Baltic
right?
Street,
Yeah,
absolutely. You could see me, www.balticstreet.org.
Yeah.
Right? I'm all over the city. Literally, we have peer advocacy services everywhere from the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens. And this is another thing, Yumi. we don't have direct services with individuals that are immigrations, right? And we find it really difficult to try to support these individuals that are coming in and always end up having to refer them out, and they kind of get lost in the system. And it's a scary time, right? So when people are seeking supports, especially around mental health, that are not citizens of this country, right? Where do they go where they don't feel that they're going to be engaged with ICE activities? So we need support around that.
Yeah, and actually, one thing that's good is that a lot of the city agencies, particularly the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, are developing services that are specifically sort of catering to this population and these needs. But I'm glad, Taina, that you mentioned that the city and the state, I mean, we're a sanctuary city, we fund a lot of services that are free. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you're documented or not. A lot of these employment agency programs I mentioned, the education support, the clubhouses, these are all services that are free to anybody. And we're hoping that we're doing a better job of educating providers, too, for when there's situations when ICE agents come. You know, there is this sort of immediate fear that you have to give up information to ICE immediately, which is not the case at all. And this is protected information, and there is no legal, you know, authority that they possess.
Right.
You would have to give them information about people participating.
So we don't allow ICE here in CUNY, right? In John Jay, they're not allowed to enter the building. Is ICE allowed to enter a shelter?
I'm sorry.
Is ICE allowed to enter a city shelter? Do you know?
Oh, the city shelter
Would ICE
system.
be allowed to enter a city
Yeah,
shelter?
that's a good question.
Okay.
I saw my supervisor here a minute ago.
Okay.
What do we know
She's
about
hiding.
that?
Yeah, that's a good question, though.
Not supposed to, okay. Okay. Not supposed to turn them away?
No, they turn.
They are supposed to
They
turn
are
them
supposed to
away.
turn them
Okay.
away.
So if they aren't turned away, then that would be a mistake by a staff member. Okay. So I know we have another question.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Andre, and first I want to say I appreciate the panel and being here. Y'all was very insightful and informative. But my question is this. I'm a peer, and I've been in the field for like 11 years, going on 12, and one of the things that y'all mentioned a lot of great stuff up here on this panel, but there was no mention about the support from the federal government. And right now, like, a lot of things are going to get wiped out, you know. And 2 months ago, this was almost a reality as far as, like, what the federal government was about to phase out all the funding for mental health and substance use services, you know. And it was by the grace of God that they came to some type of decision not to do that. So my question is this: with everything that y'all talked about, like as far as other than the 988, what is the I would say the backup plan or any type of like foundation that's going to come forth if that day comes? Because at the end of the year of this year, Medicaid is going to be phased out, and that's part of billing. That's the foundation of all of this. So anybody got any solutions to that?
So Medicaid isn't going to be phased out, but it's going to be changed, right? And so the issue is that, right, Medicaid is paid by the states and the federal government in different proportions.
It comes from the
New York
federal
State,
government.
it's a 50-50 split, right? And then the federal government, the state decides what to pay for, and their budget is going to be constrained by reduced support from the federal government. And that's going to lead to downstream effects like staffing being cut and things like that.
That's what I'm
right?
talking about.
Yeah,
And
and so that is something that is coming, and it's not really known what the impact will be. I don't know what, I think probably, Sasha, you probably have the best thoughts about this, or the most informed thoughts about this.
So, yes, we do not know what the exact impact will be because even coming to the end of the year, again, things might change again. It's ever changing. We are planning and pivoting to support our programs as much as we can without federal dollars. It's not 100% for most programs.
Would that be a struggle though, because it's only coming from the state and the city?
It would be a struggle, but the point is that we don't want to close our doors. So even if we have to pivot, adjust, make some concessions, that is what we're trying to do. But again, it's an ever-evolving situation that goes back and forth, as you saw what happened a few months back, where we kind of have to just ebb and flow with that. So we don't have a definitive answer, but we're definitely looking at new ways of programming, new ways of putting ourselves together so that we can still service the population that we've been serving all these years. You're welcome.
So we could do one more question, and then I just want us to have informal, and then if anyone wants a book, we got them. Okay. Yes. Do you have a microphone?
Oh, I have.
Oh, okay.
I
Sorry,
have
someone
some-
has a question. Someone had the microphone already. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's not a very serious question, but it's just some feelings when I read the books. First, I want to really thank Professor Yanos for bringing this book into existence. I think writing this book need a lot of bravery and a lot of efforts because it hits to this hit home for me because in my country, I'm from China. Like documenting the dark side of the nation, it's really hard, and it could be like cause some imprisonment. I have some friends who has dedicated themselves to say something like really truth, but they're just forced to vanish out from the public eyes. I feel like really touching when I'm here, and then I just wanted to say thank you.
So the ability to speak openly about things that we see as bad, at least as a privilege, at least we have that opportunity to do that, right? And it's important to think about that and be grateful for it and not take it for granted. And you're talking about in China how if people do that, then they might be disappeared in some kind of way, and that's something that's very intense. So thank you for bringing that up so that we can acknowledge that as we're talking about how much we have problems with the system, at least we're able to do that.
To say
Yeah,
something, that's
yeah.
correct,
Yeah.
yes.
So we have one more
Oh,
question.
okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I mean, you guys, all of you, were amazing. I'm a student here, non-graduate student, and in one of my classes the other day, I proposed to the professor because he was like, "What's going on? Like, you're so quiet. The students are so quiet." And I raised my hand and I proposed. I said, and this has to do with the war. I said, what's going on with like grassroots protesting, you know, like the 60s and things like that? A lot of people are so instilled with so much fear. And the same thing goes with protesting. I'm a peer specialist. And the same thing goes with mental health. You know, instead of just saying, okay, well, Medicaid's going to be cut, what are the vehicles that we can do beside waiting for funding? Can just everyday students, young people, what can they do grassroots to fight some of the oppression that's here right now in this country?
Well, if we learned anything from the 60s, the movement was ran by and led by young people, right? You may have had one or two individuals that were the faces, but the real individuals with the protest in the diners were young people of color, right? So what is happening? I would request that you all take a look at IDA's website. Dr. Yanos talked about that he sits on their board. They have wonderful, they're like an amazing radical education, peer movement that I actually used to sit on their board. So I would say take a look at their things of what they're doing, as far as like some of their workshops and some of the events that they do have. But you know, you have to connect out there. You have to say to yourself, are you gonna be at home today, or if you see that there's a protest, are you gonna go out there? Are you gonna use your power of freedom of speech today, right? And what does that look like? You know, and again, organization doesn't have to be, you know, violent. Organization doesn't have to be quiet and subtle, but it has to happen, right? It has to be collective and it has to be community-based, right? I wish I had a bunch of pencils right now, because I usually have an example with one pencil, you can snap it in half. But take a group of pencils, it's hard to break, right? So you have to organize with, you know, other like-minded individuals like yourself and go out there and, you know, use your voice.
And you know, there are actually a fair number of advocacy organizations. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And they actually, like the Alliance for Rights and Recovery, we have the In Unity Alliance. These are organizations that will actually train people to how to advocate, how to speak to the elected officials. We have Albany Advocacy Days where people go up. They provide buses to go up and talk to your elected officials and, you know, band together with other like-minded folks who can help you push your agenda.
I also want to mention that, you know, in the 70s, John Jay College, right, where we are, you know, was, you learn this when you come here as a faculty member. Maybe you guys didn't learn this, but we were going to be closed, right? And there was a very strong protest movement that involved faculty, students, staff, everybody, right, to save our college, right? You know, we were on the chopping block, you know, from, you know, when CUNY was switched from the city to the state, right? And we saved the college, and here we are, you know, 50 years later, and we're, you know, we're feeling pretty comfortable in our position now with these amazing views that we have, right? So you can turn things around when you organize. So I do want to state that. I want to give people a chance to just talk to each other, because I know people are getting restless, and I also want to just say there's a lot of information that Yumi put on the table there next to the books that I have. So I want to give people a chance to talk informally to each other and to us. So if that's okay. Yes, Omar, you wanted to say one last thing?
I'd say one last thing.
Okay.
Hi guys, my name is Omar. The 988 and the things that you guys talked about is very beautiful. I didn't know about 988, but I know about the service when the social worker and what's it called, that team again?
Are you talking about the peer support
The
specialist?
yeah, that one.
Okay.
What about advertisement? Which office could push advertisement? Because advertisement is a big one. I go around and I tell people about that one. One time I see somebody going through something and I did call them and talk to them about that. But advertisement is a big thing that could reach people attention. So I think that's a great idea.
So the marketing around services in general
Right.
across the city.
And that has to be
I'm glad you mentioned
it
that.
has to be on
because-
YouTube, and it has to be on social media, right? It has to be on things that reach
Yeah, they
people.
reach
Yeah.
young people.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that we did, our office did put together was a resource guide so that, you know, the general public could understand what kind of services are out there, how do you access them, even how do you become a peer specialist? What is it? Okay, how do you access mental health supportive housing? I didn't know about these things, and I thought I was pretty savvy. So please take advantage of the resources we developed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.